Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are engaging with the words of Tzav this morning. We are engaging with a parsha in the beginning of the book of Vayikra, of Leviticus. This is the priestly manual. These are the instructions to the priests, and they have been read lovingly through the ages by the rabbis in many, many, many ways. It was originally the Mishnah arguing about these laws as a way of lingering in love over the temple service. So these instructions are given to the Israelites in the desert at the Mishkan, at the tabernacle, but really this is the daily service of the temple. And so the Mishnah comes to argue when it says a morning offering, when exactly is it morning? From when can you offer the morning offering? How late can you, and how do we know? Because our answer, and it goes on and on. So the Mishnah goes on and on. Then the Talmud argues about, no, it's not 3 stars, it's blah, blah. So people go, why? Like it was done. The temple was destroyed in 70 by the Romans. Why does the Mishnah and the Talmud go on and on and on and on arguing about the sacrifices and the details about them? And the best explanation I've heard is that it's because it's all they had left. It's all the Israelites, who were now the Jews, had left of their tradition when they were sovereign in their own land. Now they lived in exile. Now they lived in a diaspora. And this was just their way of living in that time where they had a temple and they could serve Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and to argue over the details of it, even though it was completely irrelevant now, was their way of, like, when you read a love letter over and over and over and over, as we do Torah in general. But that's really how these texts stayed alive. And then when we shifted to a system with Rabbinic Judaism of prayer in place of sacrifice, remember the prayer system is based on the sacrificial system. There is a prayer service for every time there was an offering made in the temple. That is why there are 3 services a day. There were 3 offerings a day in the temple. So that is the schedule we still follow. On holidays, we have Shachrit and an extra service called Musaf. That is because there was an extra sacrifice on holidays after the morning sacrifices. Okay? So all of our prayers follow the sacrificial system so that they were linked that way in love and in tradition. But the rabbis go much further. They continue to read the Levitical manual metaphorically. So even after they're arguing about what exact time can you offer the morning offering, then what time does that mean you can pray in the morning service? How early can you start the morning service? How late can you do the morning service? Can Mincha and Ma'ariv be shmished together? So all of that stuff, they take it one step further. And by the time we have the emergence of something like Jewish mysticism and Hasidism, we have now taking the sacrifices and making them metaphorical. They don't leave the prayer system. They're staying within the prayer system that's based on the sacrificial system, but they want to deepen their connection and the connection of these texts to what it has to say to us. And so they metaphorize, is that a word? They metaphorize the instructions to be spiritual instruction. So we're going to look at one of the examples of that today, the move from the literal practice in the Mishkan, if there was one, but probably the literal practice in the temple, to why was it meaningful then? What can we pull out of it that the rabbis have pulled out of it, that commandment? And then what did the tradition do with it after that makes it metaphor, but makes it a powerful metaphor for spiritual practice? This, for me, is the brilliance of Judaism. This is how we're still here. This is why we're still having Torah study in the age of technology. We're still getting together on Zoom to do this because our tradition continued to reconstruct these texts. And it worked. They meant it. They weren't just saying, okay, we want to keep reading this, so let's figure out a way we can make it meaningful. They actually found meaning in these texts. And so I want to share some of those with you. All right, Bert, what are you laughing at? Because I know it's not what I was saying. Are you cheating? Unbelievable. Wow.
It actually was what you were saying when you said they actually found meaning in.
Okay.
I'm also fascinated by the fact that these were the first texts that children was.
Yes, exactly. Partly because it is so concrete, right? So part of it is the vocabulary, part of it is how concrete everything is. That's where you start with little ones, 6 years old. Okay, here we go. What am I doing? I'm sharing a screen, yes? Okay, can you all see this? You all see it? Okay, sorry, it's only been 6 years that I've been using. So we're starting Parshat Tzav. God spoke to Moshe saying, Tzav et Aharon ve'et banav lemor, command Aaron and his sons, saying, Zot Torat ha'olah. This is the instruction. Remember, Torah means instruction. Zot Torat ha'olah. This is the instruction regarding the Olah, the Holocaust. Hi ha'olah al mokda al hamizbeach kol halayla ad haboker be'esh hamizbeach tukad bo. Okay. This is the instruction of the Olah, the offering that is completely burned up. It is the Olah, right? So what is going to happen with this Olah? It is going to be on the Mizbeach, on the altar all night until morning. And the fire on the fire of the altar will be going on it. Okay, so the fire goes all night. The Olah is left on the Mizbeach, on the fire all night till the morning. The Lavasha Kohen midovad, and the priest will dress in linen garments, michnesevad, and with linen pants, yobash he will wear on his flesh, vehirim et hadeshen, and he will lift up what? The deshen. What is deshen? Here it's translated as ashes. Asher tochal ha'esh et ha'olah, that the fire consumed of the olah on the altar. V'samo etzel hamizbeach, and place them beside the mizbeach, beside the altar. Then he will change his clothing, put on other vestments, and carry the deshen el michutz lamachaneh, to outside the camp, el makom tahor, to a pure place. V'ha'esh al mizbeach tukad bo, and the fire on the altar will be kept going on it, not to go out. Every morning the priest shall feed wood to it, lay out the burnt offering on it, and turn into smoke the fat parts of the offerings of well-being. Okay, let's look one more sentence. Esh tamid tukad al hamizbeach lo tichpeh. A perpetual fire shall be kept burning on the altar, not to go out. Okay. Someone wrote me a very beautiful email that he's been attending our Torah study every week on Spotify, and said that he listened to our Parsha for this week from 2024, where we focused on this set of Psukim 6 and 7, that a perpetual fire shall be going on the altar, it will not go out, that this is, the teaching there was that this is not prescriptive, meaning this is what you shall do, it shall not go out, meaning you shall not let it go out, but it is proscriptive. This is what's going to happen. It is a promise from God that the light on the fire shall be perpetual, it will never go out. God promises the Israelites, if they tend this fire, it will never go out. Beautiful, beautiful set of teachings through the generations about that, what it means to tend the fire on the altar, because of course, metaphorically, the rabbis understand the altar to be the heart, and we have to tend the fire on the heart, and we have to feed the fire, and they have beautiful teachings. Go listen to the lecture of 2024 from this podcast. They have beautiful teachings about what that means. What does that mean to offer things on the Mizbeach, the altar of the heart? But we're not going there today. We're going somewhere else. Where are we going? We're going to, it's always amazing when I start preparing early in the week for this, that I get this itch, I get something I want to dig into, And then I'm like, but it's not going to go anywhere. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's a thing. Oh my gosh, who knew? Like, I've been studying Torah all this time and I did not know it's a thing. It happened again this week, which I'm so excited to share with you. All right, so we've got this business of we get Torah Ta'olah. This is the Torah, the teaching, the instruction about the Olah, about the Holocaust that is to be burned up completely. It remains on the fire all night till the morning. Then what happens? In the morning, the Kohen dresses in fine linen, right? So this is a sacred obligation. This is a sacred act that he's doing. He puts on his priestly garments, not the fancy ones, but the fine linen ones. He puts them on and he lifts up the deshen, the ashes that were, right? That what are the ashes? We get them kind of defined now. The ashes that were the olah, that the fire turned into ashes, right, on the altar, and he places them beside the altar. Then he changes clothes into regular clothes and takes the ashes outside the camp to a pure place to be deposited, okay? So then what he's going to do is he's going to take a handful of these ashes and he's going to make of it truma. He's going to make of it an offering. Remember truma, the parsha truma, where they bring gifts? He's going to make of a handful of these offerings a truma, a gift. So, and then what this gets called is Torat, Trumat Hadeshen. It's the truma offering of deshen, of ashes. Trumat Hadeshen. So it's not really the instruction about the olah. It's really an instruction about the ashes of the olah and the truma offering that's to be made of a handful of those ashes that stay there by the altar. The rest goes to a pure place. Okay? So, y'all know me. What did I like about that? Why did I pick this? Trumat Hadeshen. Like, this is the teaching of the truma offering from the ashes. What do you think I liked about that? Or was curious about? Is it that terrifying to imagine being in my head? I guess so.
Why didn't it say Olah?
So why? So how come there isn't more about the Olah? If this is Torah Ta'olah, how come there's not more about the Olah? Why is it talking about the deshen? Why so much about? And who cares about the deshen, about the ashes? Rachel?
So I'm not going to try and get in your head.
Yeah, probably a smart thing.
You know, right back at you. But you know I've been obsessed with this Battle of Kadesh ever since you brought it up. And so I keep thinking about how everything about Torah has been the usurping of the way things were in Egypt. So when you referred to, they're ashes. So I keep thinking, so the priest is lifting up, elevating dirt. The priest takes the thing that's the lowliest, dirt, and lifts it up. So the lowliest thing is now the gift to God. It first has to be set aside. The priest has to change his clothes. The dirt is a gift. And now the priest if this were the Egyptian system, the priest who's the highest, or the parallel, the Egyptian parallel is the highest, would never be the one to carry out ashes, is actually now supposed to go to all the trouble of changing his clothes and carry these out, not dumping them in a dump, but to a pure place. To me, this is all I can think about is how this is now I just see everything's been usurped and flipped. This is totally revolutionary. So
love that. So one friendly amendment. Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. One friendly amendment. It's not dirt.
Right. It's not. It's ash. It's the ash from this sacred offering. Right.
Yes.
I'm using that as shorthand, but it's like picking up a pile of ashes.
Yes. So you're right on. And I think it's important that it's the remnants of the Olah. All right, Pam, you were nodding. And Tamara, you had your hand up. Pam?
What touches me is that the ashes are treated with such respect that, they're a pile of ashes. We might not think that they're that important, but it turns out they are that important. They're part of the holy offering, and that is part of the temple service. The service is not complete unless this is done to the ashes. So it just shows you how specific everything is, but how that the process, that even the ashes are treated with respect.
Beautiful. Tamara?
Well, I had two thoughts. One, I was trying to get in your head, and I was trying to wonder about being dressed in nice clothes and picking up ashes. And I thought, no,
Doesn't
that's
work.
not something, right. They would want to change their clothes and then take up the ashes. But I also think it's kind of along the lines of what we're all saying, is that it's important to be able to get your hands dirty, like to be able to get your hands into, what's real and what's not always pretty. I think metaphorically, hands being our heart, our soul, our thoughts, don't be afraid to get into it.
Beautiful. I'm loving this. All right, Mehmet, I'm going to let y'all teach from now on.
I might be going a bit offline, but when I think of history, of recent history and distant history, we've always rebuilt and reconstructed our civilization from our ashes, our own ashes. Beautiful. I don't want to be specific about that, but there are so many instances that we've done that, and we've honored those ashes, and each time we made it again and again.
Beautiful, Mehmet.
And those were sacred.
Beautiful. And it makes me think, Lisa Rosenbaum, of Violins of Hope and the ashes in the violin. So Mehmet's talking about, sometimes it's literal ashes. So ashes from the crematoria that were in the violin that survives, Lynn Himmelstein, from Violins of Hope. Wow, that is a powerful, powerful image. Oof. Okay, I got to take a second. Wow.
But also frightening.
Yes, terrifying.
Yeah.
And to Dana's point, which is where I went also, to Dana who put it in the chat, the ashes of our homes.
Yes.
Our lives, the detritus of our lives, that, like, it's not just broken pieces of china, right? It's just no words right now for it. Betsy?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I couldn't help thinking about digging through the ashes of what was left from our homes, many of our homes that burned. And I had a bunch of friends over last night. Many of us lost our homes. And I was showing them what we dug up out of the ashes, which were shards of broken pottery and dishes and bathroom tiles and so forth. And that out of those ashes was created something beautiful, which is a friend of mine made a mosaic of our house out of the shards. And that's what, like, just this whole thing about ashes. So there is something kind of sacred and holy that can come out of those ashes, which is, evident by this beautiful mosaic that my friend made for us.
Beautiful, Betsy. I have pieces waiting for that experience. And Rachel, yes, the Phoenix. Yes, absolutely. That is what, right, we're dealing with. Okay. Bert?
I think that it's important that the ashes go to a place of respect, but they're moved out of the camp, and we don't dwell on them. We don't make them we don't keep them in the Mishkan. They're ashes. We respect them. And we know when to put them aside and when to move ahead. And I think that's a challenge that we all have, those of us who are homes, of, when do we transition from the ashes to putting them in a place of respect, as we do with the grave of a person, and then move on.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Bert. Beautiful. Alex is asking, then why are you linking that to cremation, Alex, because of the respect for the ashes?
I'm not linking it. I'm just curious about, it's my understanding, right, that we're not supposed to be cremated.
Correct.
And so I guess, yes, I was curious about the reasoning behind that. And
the reasoning behind not cremating the body is, in traditional Judaism, many Jews are doing cremation. I don't mean to say they don't. They do. But the traditional teaching is that we are to return the body to the earth the way it was given to us. That we come from the earth, to the earth we return, and we are to give it back the way it was given to us. We don't destroy the body, and burning it in fire is desecrating and destroying the image of God. That each of us is created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of the divine, and that includes our physical image. Not that the divine is physical, God forbid, but that, we are reflective of, we are each an image of the divine, and we are not supposed to desecrate that by burning the body. This is also, by the way, where things like tattoos and all that kind of stuff is from not permanently altering the body that was given to us this way. Then people say, well, how can you pierce your ears? Well, there's lots of discussions about all this, as you can imagine. But it means that's why people who get their limbs amputated for some reason, that those limbs are buried in a Jewish cemetery, right? So because it's still considered part of the body is sacred, the body is holy, we do not burn it. Most likely, of course, this also has to do with pagan practices of burning the body. So of course, Israelite teaching is going to be different than pagan teaching, so that they don't backslide into pagan behaviors. But it's also why we bury so quickly in Jewish tradition. Within 24 hours was the tradition. I want to be clear, was the tradition. And it's based on the value of kavod hamet, the honoring of the deceased, the honoring of the body, because you had decomposition. So a decomposing body was considered an insult to the body. And so you got it buried right away so that there was no possibility of decomposition. Now there are arguments in the Orthodox world that say we have refrigeration. There is not a possibility right away of decomposition. There's a possibility that there's technology to prevent decomposition. And the way we honor the deceased the most now is to wait for their family to fly in from different places to attend the funeral. Therefore, hold the body in a refrigerator until the family gets there. So it's interesting that now there's an argument, should we bury right away to honor the body, or should we wait and keep it in the refrigerator to honor the body by having more people present at the funeral to mourn that person? So it's an interesting new thing. Bert?
Then there's the question of people who are cremated, what to do with the ashes. In my particular situation, that was the wish of my parents. And out of respect for them, that's what I did. But then the question became, what do you do with the ashes? Do you put them in a jar and put them in the living room? Do you bury them? Do you go to the Neptune Society? So in this particular case, if we look at Tzav and the feeling there, it would be kind of what we did, which was to bury the ashes in a cemetery, which indicated for us a pure place and a place of respect and a place that we could, place that we could go, which I guess is similar to go bury them in a pure place, although I was not thinking of that at that time. Yeah. But the people who, and again, if a relative requests cremation, at least for progressive Jews, I think it's appropriate to respect their wishes. But I had a whole discussion with another family member whose father wanted to have the ashes, spread in the sea, about whether that was appropriate. So without getting into a long discussion, I think this also raises that question of, if you do the cremation, then what do you do afterwards?
So I love that your instinct was to go exactly where the tradition goes, right? So what did I just prove by this exercise? Having y'all share before I show you the teachings that I picked, that I found that I really resonated with. What I'm showing you is it's not out there crazy to read into these texts. Look how much y'all came up with. 30 minutes, y'all talked about this without me prompting you. You all came up with this on your own. The instinct, but also it's there. I think it's there in the actual original temple ritual. I don't think we're pushing it. The ashes could have been vacuumed up. And like someone said, it would not have been the priest's job to take out the garbage. I don't think we're pushing it to say from the actual Israelite practice and instruction, even the ashes, are seen as holy because the offering was holy. That it's now ashes does not change the intention of the sacrifice. Just because it's ashes doesn't, the fact that it's ashes is not what defines what it is. What defines what it is the Israelites' intention, the priests and the Levites' practice, and presumably the force in the universe that you are drawing close to and drawing close to you in making that offering. That remains sacred. I think it's right there. We all went there, right? Unprompted. Okay, maybe a little prompted. But because I think it's true, and I think it's wise, and I think it's very Jewish that the priest takes out the ashes because they're not davka garbage. They are holy. So one thing I want to tell you, that's not in the text I'm going to show you, but it was a teaching from Hasidism that somebody goes to the Rebbe. I won't remember it exactly, but someone goes to the Rebbe and says, according to halacha, because my wife says because the priest takes out the ashes that I have to take out the garbage. Is that true? So I love that the wife is quoting Torah to the husband, quoting halacha, and the Rebbe says, no, it's not true that you are obligated to take out the garbage because the Kohen had to take out the ashes. No. So the guy goes home, nanner to his wife. That was how I imagine it. And then the Rebbe comes to the house the next day and knocks on the door. The husband answers and says, oh, Rebbe, please come in. Can we serve you something? How can we help you? And the Rebbe says, no, thanks. I'm here to take out the trash because you may think it's beneath you, but I don't think it's beneath me to take out the trash. It's a sacred obligation to participate in taking care of the house and the home, right? So, right, it's there. It's so there, people, in our tradition that, like Tamara's, we get our hands dirty. And even the priest, like Rachel was saying, the priest, the highest office in the sacrificial system, carries out the sacred ashes. Okay, let's look at some text. This is Rabbi Ben Einsiedler. Taking up the ashes from the previous day may seem like a mundane activity, something to be done before the main event. Remember, this happens first thing in the morning, before the sacrifices, before the main event of the sacrifice itself, along with the priests washing their hands and the incense offered afterwards. However, they're going to claim, right, something very different, something very personal that it can pertain to our lives. The ashes are literally the residue of the day before. Each morning, a priest would gather them up and move them to a place outside the camp, to a pure place, as Torah teaches. They still existed, but like Bert said, but they were moved aside so that more wood and more offerings, meaning today's offerings, could be laid on the altar. You had to make room for today's offerings. The metaphorical residue and remains of yesterday, if not dealt with properly, can quickly become a burden and a hindrance. To me, the taking up of the ashes from the altar symbolizes that whatever happened yesterday, whether it be positive or negative, needs to yield to the possibilities of today. The choreography of the priestly service of doing the same thing every day, day in and day out, is an exercise in routine. I place this next to my desk where I can see it as a reminder that what's past is past, but doesn't completely go away. I can take the energy of the day before and channel it into a productive day to day, or equally day to day, or equally important, brush off a day that was less than ideal and start fresh. In addition, I take comfort in the fact that there was a perpetual fire on the altar. It was never allowed to go out. Even when the sacrifices were totally consumed, the connection between the people and God was never visibly absent. Especially nowadays, as I've remarked in the past, our lives and what's happening in the world can seem disorganized, improvised, scary, and disorienting. What? The taking of the ashes and sacrificial service, because it doesn't change except for Shabbat and festivals, is a beacon of stability. Sometimes those things which are familiar and perhaps even a little mundane are the things that we can attach ourselves to for stability. It's this stability and comfort that the service provides that allows us to weather the storms of life. Each day we do certain things that we do every day, yet I still find great comfort in that first cup of coffee, in my morning davening, and in the rhythms of our sacred calendar. I think for me, one of the ways I learned that so well over the past 15 months is that that's what I have missed the most. That is how I've been, I think, the most disoriented and off balance, is the daily stuff that gave me comfort that I did not realize how much I depended on them as grounding. Whether it was the view I woke up to from my bed, looking out the balcony at the ocean and the palm trees and the mountains, everything, right? To going down the stairs, right? To taking out the dog, to getting a cup of coffee. I mean, just we don't realize how stabilizing a lot of the daily small rituals are until we can't do them because we're physically changed or hurt or compromised, because everything physically is gone, right? Because those touchstones are gone. But that stabilizing set of routines, I have a new appreciation for in this time post fire, but also post many things that have happened. I had it when I had my hip surgery, and like all of a sudden couldn't function normally, like couldn't do what I was used to my body being able to do. So I think it's an important teaching that this too, like as part of the grounding, routinized ritual that keeps us steady. And we have to move the ones from yesterday, like Bert said, out of the way to make room for what's happening today, right? And to allow ourselves the gift of starting over. So it's a both, as usual with our people, it's a both and kind of thing. What else have we got? This is from Professor Jonathan Grossman. Oh, I love this. Okay. Bringing these two commandments under the same title. What two commandments? The commandment to take truma, an offering, a gift of a handful of ashes, and keeping it beside the altar, and the commandment to take the ashes to a pure place outside the camp. Those two commandments under the same title, meaning Torat HaDeshen, the instruction about the deshen, the ashes, creates a delicate dialogue between stability and change, like we just said, the both and, between regularity, continuity on the one hand, and flux on the other. Both are exhibited every morning together side by side. The divine revelation that is represented by the fire on the altar is unchanging and eternal, right? It never goes out. And that is what does the consuming, the fire. That represents the divine, the force, the energy of the divine. It's always there. It never goes away. God is present in this place all the time, day and night. It doesn't matter what day we're talking about. In contrast, the person who brings the sacrifice and brings the flesh for the offering is a new and different book every day. Standing before God one day is not the same as the religious consciousness another day. It is possible that on Monday they will bring a burnt offering, and on Tuesday they will want to bring a peace offering. As a result, the flesh is cleared off the altar each day in order to enable the person to express something new on the altar, while the fire that receives the offering is perpetual and constant. The ashes on the altar represent the encounter between the person, who is transient, temporary, and always changing, and the presence of God, which is constant and immutable. The ashes are, quote, taken up in order to testify to this complex encounter, and they are taken out in order to clear space for the temple service of the new day. Beautiful. So in this case, the permanent, the fixed, is the flame, the fire, what we would call the energy, the force that we would call God. And what changes is the person who brings the offering. We are temporary. We're going to be, dirt, to quote Rachel, one day. And we change day to day. So here's this beautiful balance. But so he's saying it's the fire and the offering that becomes ash. But it's deeper than that. Two commandments under the same title. What are the two commandments? Taking truma of the ashes and taking the ashes out. I want us to hold that image for our next commentary. So the flame is constant. That's the presence of the divine, the sacred energy in the universe, however we want to talk about it, mystery at the heart of reality. The ashes are the temporary that we have to clear away and get ready to do again, and our thoughts and everything changes. Okay, but there's another way to interpret this double commandment under Torah Hadeshen, Mitzvah Hadeshen, the mitzvah of Deshen. The act of cleaning the altar was a housekeeping function necessary to prepare the altar for the new day's service. But the act of removing a handful of the ashes of yesterday's service was an act of service with a different function. Yes, we have to take the ashes out, and we treat them respectfully because we have to clear the way for what's new, for sacred practice today. But the truma that one takes from those ashes, each day's handful of ashes was carefully placed next to the altar with special care taken so that it would not scatter. We know this from Mishnah. These ashes were placed on the east side of the altar. What was the east side of the altar? The side entrance for the people, where they brought their offerings, so that they would serve to all as a remembrance of yesterday's service. These ashes had profound significance. They reminded the nation at the transition to the service of the day that is about to begin that the new day does not bring new tasks. The task that is incumbent upon us today is the same task that was incumbent upon us yesterday. Normally, I love this, people. Stay with me. Normally, an object used in the temple service, which has completed its function, is no longer subject to the prohibition of me'ilah, use of that object or remnant for profane purposes. All right? So if you use a cup for kiddush, you can't use that for anything else. It's now kadosh. It's now set aside. And we know that about all the utensils used in the temple. All of them were kadosh. They were set aside. They could not be used for mundane purposes. But the halacha, the Jewish law is, if it has completed its service, you can use it for something else, because we shouldn't waste. Okay? This is the case with the remainder of the ashes, excluding this one daily handful. What is he saying? The ashes are done. They are taken and placed outside the camp in a pure place. But presumably, you could use them, to bank a fire. You could use them to do something else. Okay? But a handful of them are Trumat Hadeshen. It's a Truma offering. It stays an offering, retained its holy character forever. Its holiness was never exhausted. This is because in a deeper sense, the purpose of lifting the ashes was not to deposit them. That would have rendered them exhausted after deposit. Rather, because these ashes serve to recall the past throughout the future, that mission sustains their holy character forever. Oh my God. Is that so beautiful? Or am I just crazy? I think that is gorgeous. The ones that are deposited outside the camp have finished their sacred purpose, but a handful are placed by the altar as a truma, as a perpetual offering. They stay holy because it is the handful that helps us remember the past, the sacred obligation of memory, and bringing it into today. Not all of it. Like Bert said, we have to move on. But some of it, we carry forward into today to bring the past with us, yizkor, the sacred obligation of remembering. If the Trumat Hadeshen begins the new day with a reminder that today's service presents the same task as yesterday's, Hotza'at Hadeshen, the taking out of the ashes of the camp, signifies that the old must be cleared to make way for fresh devotion. We are to approach the task as though we had never accomplished anything before. While the memory of yesterday's performance is to anchor our mission, it should not inhibit our own performance. Yesterday's accomplishments belong to yesterday. There's a lot there. I'm going to let Lisa share her thoughts.
Yeah, I just have a question. Somehow that expression, a handful of ashes, is very familiar to me. And I'm just wondering, what is the context of that expression in the modern world? Why do we think of, I've heard of it, a handful of ashes. I think there are probably books and movies named A Handful of Ashes. And I don't know what it means and how it might be connected to this. Does anybody have any idea about that?
I can't wait.
What does that expression mean today?
For the shiur next week, where you tell us where it comes from.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can ask ChatGPT. You should get it.
Okay.
This is one of those things I would ask ChatGPT.
Let's ask Chat while we're on here.
to let it research it and see if it comes up with anything. I want you to know that when I've used ChatGPT for Torah study, I'm proud to say, I'm like, that's not right. So ChatGPT is fallible and does not know everything and will try to tell you it knows everything, but it does not. It has made several mistakes in interpreting Torah. And I don't mean like some poetic interpretation. I mean, I'm like, no, that's not actually true. The priests can't do that. No. Anyway.
Or you get a Christian interpretation.
Just saying. Yeah. So, but you can look up ChatGPT.
I will check it out.
All right. So what did I love about this? I love that both we take out the ashes and clear away. Yes. And a handful remains as a truma, as an offering, and remains sacred and stays there. And that little bit reminds us, okay, we're connected to the past, but not letting it take over all the room of the present. And just because you had a successful teaching last week, Rabbi Bernstein, don't get lazy. Don't think just because you taught some nice Torah last week that you don't have to Monday on your day off start looking at the Parsha for this week. That's great that you taught Torah last week. That's awesome that you loved it. But guess what? It's a new week. It's a new Friday. You need to prepare something new. You have to keep studying. You have to keep learning. You have to keep getting excited. That's the obligation, to keep the fire going on the altar. Always. Means you have to keep feeding it. Mehmet.
Question to challah bakers among ourselves. As far as I know, when you knead the dough, make the dough for challah, you set aside a piece of it for what purpose? I remember, but I don't remember for what purpose that is.
You burn it up. You burn it up. You offer it. You take challah. It's called taking challah. So you take part of the challah and you burn it up in the oven.
So not far from this tradition.
Not far at all from this tradition. It's a remnant of this tradition for sure. Right? So if you look at kosher stuff, it'll say challah taken. Look at the label on, hugely traditional hechsher, something that marks the level of kashrut. And on a very serious level of kashrut, it says challah taken. Because you can't eat bread that hasn't had challah taken. It's a mitzvah. It's a commandment. All right, Alex?
I just love what you said about, that's all, but just about anytime you have had something successful, keeping humble, keeping small, returning back to the text, returning back to the practice. Because the minute I just love that. Thank you.
And it reminds me also that now that you said it, of beginner's mind, right? This is meditation and mindfulness practice, which is we sit just like we did yesterday, right? We start over, and yet we use the same posture and the same practice so that we habituate the body to when we sit in this posture, the mind starts to relax and to settle. So it's a both and, again, of practice so that we get used to it and we strengthen the muscles of attention. And we're supposed to come with beginner's mind, knowing we're going to start thinking. In the middle of our mindfulness practice, we're going to start thinking because that's what happens. And we come with beginner's mind, with no expectations, with no, wishes for what this sit's going to be. We just face each moment and each thought and each whatever as it is. So it's beautiful, Alex. Thank you. Yes, Lisa.
An update according to ChatGPT, and this is really interesting given what we've been saying about what the handful of ashes means. The expression a handful of ashes is usually symbolic rather than literal. It conveys a sense of loss, emptiness, or something that has been reduced to nothing of value. In other words, after years of effort, all he had left was a handful of ashes. After destruction or failure, it can refer to something that once had importance but is now gone or ruined. So, we are saying you take a handful and it has not lost it's really interesting. So,
right? So how amazing is it, right, that it's so Jewish that ours is completely the opposite. And look, probably it came from this. right? Like, who takes a handful of ashes from somebody who's been cremated? Nobody. Like, probably it comes from here. And look at the interpretation. The non-Jewish interpretation is that's all we have left. It's all come to naught.
Yeah.
And what are all of our commentaries saying? Like,
yeah.
But what about a phoenix that rises from the ashes?
Yes, of course.
So there's all.
Of course.
It's all in with the lens in which.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
But they're also losing these little pieces, like the Kol Halam Kulo, that you made the point that we added the word klal at all at the end, and it doesn't mean don't be afraid at all. Just don't be afraid. Don't be fearful.
Don't be afraid. Don't let fear be cloud. Don't let fear be everything.
Yeah. Anyway.
Tamara, was that a hand? Thank you, Lisa.
Sure.
I gotta say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'echianu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh, that I've lived to see a time where I used to say, next week I look forward to your drash on that, when you study it and look it up. And now, during the same shiur, we can check ChatGPT and have the start of an answer. I've lived to see that change in my lifetime studying Torah. Wow. Shechianu. All right, Tamara.
Yeah, I love this whole conversation as well. And something you said earlier on is still inside of me that's really trippy, which is that the Israelites were thinking this too. Like, just there's something about that I've really connected with, just to think that we were thinking of it then too. I mean, really,
right?
That's just trippy to me. I feel so connected to them, and one would think that these commands came from the priests, but I'm sure everyone was involved in interpreting this and being aware of what was going on. I just am loving that whole concept.
This is what people who don't do what we do, this is how they don't understand our connection to tradition. They're like, I don't get it. That stuff is so old and so out there and so not what we do anymore. And it's like what they miss, and I'm not saying this in a judgment way, I'm saying this in a sad way and happy for us. What they miss is that the instinct that created those rituals and those texts, because it wasn't the priest, by the way. That's all it's attributed to the divine. Mm-hmm. That we are carrying out the divine, right, order. The divine order is tend the flame. Don't let it go out. That is, in Reconstructionist language, the divine energy working through the human experience, because it's true. To have true spiritual practice, we have to tend the flame and not let it go out. And we need to take a handful, and we need to keep it present, and we need to connect to the past. And what you're saying that I find also so powerful, which is why I do what I do, is that the fact that instinct is thousands of years old, and that we keep renewing it and reconstructing it, is so much more profound to me than some ritual we create today out of our feeling like we're so friggin' evolved and so modern and so with it and so contemporary, right? Like there's much more power for me, like you said, in connecting to the instinct that has been there with our people and encouraged and taught and lived through the way we approach all of the rituals, including new ones, with this mindset and this soul set, and that's encouraged. I love that connection. And the depth of it is millennia old. Millennia is already plural, is millennia old. And that's what I have a hard time explaining to people, but that's the exact same feeling that keeps me showing up excited about Torah again this week.
And they were sitting around possibly like we are right now.
Yes. All right, Alex.
This is great. But, I mean, even the study of Torah can be a metaphor. These ashes is taking what was given to us, coming back to it over and over again. So taking what was new, right, from the new day, and still coming back to what we've had, to the grounding force of, I don't know, what a great Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Alex. I sent Bert early without being asked this week, the texts that I shared. And we don't have time because we had such a great, wonderful conversation. We don't have time for the second one that I sent him, which is something by Naomi Kalish called Lessons from the Ashes, where she talks about how this teaching applies to us in our daily lives to prevent burnout and, boredom with our own jobs, work, lives. Right. So the Klingon behind Rachel, right? How do we deal with, how does this Torah, the Torah of the ashes, how does it, what are the teachings that we can use in our daily lives around renewal and preventing burnout? So look at that because it'll be on the podcast. As always, Bert, who puts it up by 4:00 today, 4:30 for us. Love that. And so, Rachel, I look forward to hopefully hearing what you have to say about it. And we close our time together.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.